We are live on TCTV, Channel 8, and YouTube.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so let's stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
of
United
the United
States
States
of
of
America,
America,
and
to the
and
republic
to the
republic for which
which
it
which
stands,
stands
one
one
nation,
nation
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
Liberty,
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
evening, everybody. This meeting is being recorded in conjunction with Templeton Community TV. So we send our thanks out once again to TCTV. It's provided to the Templeton and Phillipston cable access TV stations, as well as it's live streamed on YouTube. And I'm just going to pull that up so we can look for comments. Oh, let me turn the volume off. Sorry. I just, for the record, will read who is in attendance this evening for the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee. We have Mrs. Trifilo, Mrs. Kojal, Mrs. Robichaud, Mrs. Chartier, Mr. Marks, Mr. Mason, Mrs. Matson, and myself, Mrs. Hughes. We have Superintendent Cassavant. We have Assistant Superintendent Calise. We have Anne-Marie Geister, our business manager, and we have Susan Varney, our admin assistant extraordinaire, who keeps us in line, so thank you. With that being said, our main order of business this evening is focused on the FY22 budget. We did a presentation last week, and I want to thank Mrs. Trifilo for coordinating and kicking that meeting off and handling that for me. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.
So tonight we're going to do our budget hearing, and then the school committee will discuss the certification of the FY22 budget. So with that being said, as chair, I'm going to declare this budget hearing open. It was a duly posted budget hearing meeting. It was out in the paper as required. We will be keeping an eye on the YouTube chat stream. We'll be putting a note out there. I see Mike Curry's with us already. Thank you, Mike, for joining in. Where we will take public comments from the public. We do ask, since this is an official budget hearing, if there is a comment you'd like to make for the budget hearing portion, if you could please identify who you are, if it's not clear, with your name and where you live and what your comment is, and then we'll address it as part of the budget hearing. Mrs. Varney will try and keep on top of that so that we can make sure that we address any comments or questions that come in. So with that being said, with the official opening of the budget hearing, I am going to turn over the floor and the screen to Dr. Cassavant, who will present our budget presentation. So thank you, Dr. Cassavant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as we've presented this, I think now on 3 occasions, or at least talked about the information. So I'm hopeful that there isn't any new information, although we did add a couple slides to the back, so I appreciate it. So as we discussed, and as we try to do every year, and I'm going to share the screen. Hopefully it will share. There we go. All right. Sorry about that. So, okay. So, okay. So when we start talking about the budget, and what we try to do is really put up front some of the, obviously the big rocks, or the, the big items that we are dealing with. And so FY22 budget does present a bunch of unique circumstances, which every year we seem to be presented with unique circumstances. But when we start looking at the budget in its totality, we thought it would be a good idea to really kind of give you the ending of the book first, and then kind of work our way back. So in terms of a summary at the very beginning, we feel that it'll take all available funding resources to adequately fund the FY22 budget. And the key item there is the $480,000 for E&D, which over the past couple of years, we've been able to hold a little bit back, for various reasons. But I think that this year, especially, it's going to take every dime that we have and then some, and we'll certainly talk about that. We did not add any additional staff to the general fund, although there'll be a considerable increase to class sizes at the elementary level. This is the problem is the issue that we will be faced for the next couple of years, just given the number of students, certainly at the elementary level, who are moving into the district. So we were able to maintain level services really only because of our various COVID grants, and CARES 2, which we will be able to access July 1, really saved the day, because we in fact had a shortfall of $188,345 that we were able to apply to the CARES 2 funds in order to balance. So when we look at that, we still have needs. We still have to look at what the district needs, and what we try to do every presentation is offer solution to those needs. So the high school science department has been short a teacher for a while. So we're going to add a physics teacher. It'll help expand Project Lead the Way, which, as I've said on multiple occasions, very proudly, I may add that we're one of 12 districts that have a K-12 program in terms of Project Lead the Way. And this will be at no additional cost to the district. We need to ensure that all academic and special needs services remain intact. So we've worked very hard up to these, over the last couple of years to make sure that our social emotional learning curriculum and staffing are up to par, as well as making sure that the rigor and the relevance of our curriculum meets the needs, obviously, of our students, but meets the needs of the job force, college, etc. HVAC upgrades need to advance to a more technological monitoring system. HVAC has been a very prevalent piece of the conversation as we've moved through COVID. What I can say about that is that mechanically we are sound, but in order to be able to save money, which we're always trying to do, and make sure that the system is running as it should, we need to keep upgrading the system, as it's I think it's 30 years old, I believe. So we need to put that into the overall plan. Class size reduction at the elementary school, again, I've kind of teased that at the beginning. That's certainly a need, and we're going to be chasing that for a bit, I think. And we also, the need is to address learning gaps and social emotional needs related to COVID, and not only to COVID. I think that it is part of our it is part of our mission, to make sure that we're addressing the gaps in social emotional learning in general. COVID certainly has exacerbated some of those issues. So what do we need to do to meet some of these needs? Well, in terms of the science teacher, to fill the interim, we had an interim music position when Mr. Clapp took another position in another district, and I bring up his name because first off, he filled 3 vital positions for us: music, math, and science. And when he moved on, we knew that we probably would not be able to find someone like that. And so we have the opportunity to reduce, at least in the middle and high school levels, there were 3 music teachers, and we've reduced that by 1. So there'll be a music teacher, of course, at the middle school. There'll be one at the high school. There'll certainly be one at the elementary school. But we took that open position, those funds, and that's how we filled a glaring need and a gaping hole in the science department. Again, without adding any expense to the general fund. We need to, we have been working very diligently on reorganizing special education and the delivery of those services. Special education is constantly evolving, and the needs of children change. So creating programs and making sure that staff not only are trained but are certified to meet those needs has been something that we have benefited from greatly. And actually that bore out during our evaluation from DESE, which I won't steal the thunder. That's actually next meeting, so we'll wait for that. We need to explore the opportunities of both towns for the green communities programs as it relates to HVAC, as well as anticipated grant opportunities through the federal government. What we know is that HVAC has really, has jumped in the line of priority, not only in the state level, but the federal level in terms of grants, et cetera. So we need to as we've done in almost in any situation, make sure that we're wringing out every possible dollar from other sources in order to maintain and update our HVAC system to keep our air quality at the level it should be. And we need to expand our summer program, and that's how we plan to address the learning gaps and social emotional needs. We do have an expanded summer program on tap as of right now. If we hear from the federal government that much of the monies or a portion of the monies that will come our way will also address that. But again, it's too soon to really talk about that because we have no idea. But we do, in fact, have plans to expand our summer program beyond just special needs students whom may have that an extended year in their IEP. So moving on from that, we always talk about enrollment. And enrollment has been a key topic in this district for quite some time, even pre-COVID. We have seen significant gains in certain grade levels, especially at the elementary. So to kind of give you an idea, when we took the snapshot on October 1, which is pretty standard, and much of our funding is drawn from that number, you will notice we had 1,328 students at the time, and that seemed fairly low. That didn't surprise us, seeing that we had close to 50 or close to 55 more students homeschooled than we normally have. But to kind of illustrate how fluid the situation is, on October 1, we had 569 pre-K through 4 elementary students. And as of February, I think it was 15th, when we took another snapshot, we were at 586, which is an increase of 17 students. I want to make sure that you understand that those are move-ins. Those are new to the district. Now, whether they came back from school choice, maybe from another district, or they moved in, most of them are move-ins. That's quite a jump from October to February when you're just looking at additional students. And so, we've known this for a while. Kids, we know that families are moving into the district, and at the elementary especially. So as you can see, we've seen that in real time just over a couple months. So to hopefully better illustrate that, what we tried to do is to show through the cohort model about how the homeschool, the increase in homeschool students due to COVID has affected class sizes or student population, almost immediately, but what it could do, in the future. So just as a quick tutorial, when a student is homeschooled, they literally have to unregister from the district. They're not on our rolls, so to speak. It's not like a school choice student where they're added into the count. So we know where they are. Homeschool students, we know where they are. They have to apply for homeschool, but they are not part of the funding formula in any way. So if you look at in FY20, and so when we look at FY20 and we use the color array here to show you, and that's generally typically what we would see at the elementary level year to year, roughly around 24 kids. And you could go back several years and see at or about 24 students homeschooled. But when you look at it through the cohort model and how this could affect our class sizes moving forward, so in FY20, you're a kindergartner next, then you're a first grader in FY21. And so you just simply have to kind of look, and then next year there'll be second graders. The potential there is, 10 plus students could just come back almost overnight, because when you look at FY21 homeschool, we went from 24, which is generally what we average, to 63. And, when you start looking at a plus minus of plus 38 kids, especially as full as we are, that is something that we need to, when I say plan for it, really to consider. And the reason why we have to consider is because when parents, in fact, unenrolled their children for homeschool, they were quick to ask if they could come back, and they did many of them said that they plan to come back once, COVID started to level off, et cetera. So we haven't realized the entire differential come back, although I believe, in speaking with Chelsea yesterday, I think 4 homeschool students came back yesterday. And so we're starting to see, well, there's 4. So, I mean, again, that's just one very small sample size, but it certainly will affect the greater picture when you look down at the projected classroom sizes. And so if you're looking at how they currently sit, or FY22, you start looking, and again, we have 4 teachers. Last year we made the decision to close Phillipston Elementary School, which district-wide we had 5 teachers at the elementary level, and we cut a teacher at every one of those levels, and which of course makes it 4. So the fact is that the average class size as it is today, is 27, say in the 2nd grade. If we start looking at the homeschool students whom identified as going homeschool because of COVID, and if they were to come back, we're starting to look at class sizes at 25, 30, 28, and 28. And if you follow, all the way down. And interestingly, the conversation that we're having now is skewed because of COVID. If COVID wasn't a factor, we would be having this conversation right now, just given what we know is our current class sizes. These are those class sizes you see to the far right, 25, 30, 28, and 28. That is just that's the students added that went homeschool because of COVID. So we don't see that there's any relief to that. Matter of fact, if you look at the 17 students who moved in from October to February, you could project that those numbers can only go up, not down, and that is concerning. And it's buffered a bit because of COVID. It doesn't look as bad because of COVID right now, because 1, we have many kids who are remote. We have a hybrid or cohort model, although that's about to change drastically on April 5th, which we'll get into just a little bit. So those numbers you see to the far right are real. Those are not projections in the sense that we think that kids might come back. Those are what we would be sitting on right now if in fact folks didn't go to homeschool because of COVID. School choice is always something that we track. We talk a lot about the differential, and we spend every dime of school choice in a lot of ways, of course, associated with education. What we noticed, two things happened. 1, we did not take, but 4 or 6, 4 kindergarten school choice students this year who just happened to be, grandfathered in to the old system. But we took no other school choice kids at the elementary level. And we also did not take any school choice kids at any level for that matter, not just the elementary level. And we didn't replace the students that leave through graduation or maybe go on to Monty Tech from other districts who are school choicing here in the 8th grade. So you see a very significant dip from our school choice receiving 249 to 192 kids, and that's quite a drop. We've never seen a drop like that, at least in the 5 years anyway. But interestingly enough, it's the lowest number of sending students school choice that we've ever had. So I think that is a saving grace. If we looked somewhere between the average 155, 135, would be around, like, say, 140 kids, which would be about the average. The differential would be very, very concerning and far too tight for my liking. But the pupil differential was 83, which is lower it's been for quite some time. And that translates into money, as we've talked about quite a bit. So when you look at this graph, the green, our differential, or the preliminary or projected differential to the positive is $503,000. Well, it's roughly 160,000 or give or take from the year before that. And so, this is a revenue stream that we count on. When I say unfortunately, we count on these monies to pay for some pretty important costs that we really can't do without. So we've always talked about the health insurance at $504,000. Decision was made, I think it was FY14, maybe 15. I don't remember at this point in time, to apply the district's portion of health insurance to school choice. And it's interesting. Once you do that, it's hard to take that $500,000 or $500,000 roughly and put it back into your general fund. 9 positions currently come out of school choice, and of course, what we worry about always is that we become upside down, and by that I mean that we are losing more kids than we're taking in. And we did a forecast, and just using the number of students, given a ratio of losing 30 school choice students each year, which is roughly what we lost this year, and health insurance increase of 50,000, and et cetera. So you start seeing that in 1, 2, 3, about 5 years, we're going to be upside down. We'll be at a deficit. And so that cost, that 136,000, that balance that you see in FY25, that has to be, that is the responsibility of the district to balance. So you're going to start the year off by paying the differential, a negative differential of 136,000, which of course is not something that any district can or should do, and hope to remain solvent. So with that, we start getting into, well, what does the budget mean? Where did you spend your money, or where did you propose to spend your money? And I'm going to just turn this over for this portion to Anne Marie.
So the overall expenses for the general fund budget equal a 2.61% increase. You can see some of the larger percentage increases. For example, there's a 7% increase in other school services. This category is the category that covers our school transportation. Our general fund transportation didn't go up. The number remains the same as last year, but our special ed transportation costs have gone up. That's what's driving that 7% increase. Another large one is the 5,000 category with the benefits and fixed cost. We had a 28% increase in our Worcester Regional Retirement insurance assessment for next year. And there's a 14% increase in the assessment for the retired teachers. So those two large increases are some of the drivers that are driving this up. You can see in the instructional category, the 2000s, there's only a 1%, like 1.25% increase. And we know that the teachers are getting a 1% cost of living raise. So we've worked really hard to maintain that instructional piece to keep it at a very fair level. It's just the things that are out of our hands that are driving the costs. In like the tuitions is another one where it's almost a 3% increase. And again, that's another thing, out of district tuition. These are costs that are beyond our control. The tuition costs are set by the state. And if we send a student to that particular outplaced school, we don't have a say in what we have to pay. It's dictated by the state. So overall, the 2.6 is a pretty fair increase. But as you probably know, it's higher than our income sources. So we do have a deficit, but as you'll see as we go through, we do have a plan to cover that. We just want to talk about some of the drivers that are making this budget go up. So as I said before, like a lot of the increases from the special ed, the prices that we can't control. We've had an increase in the number of IEPs this year. We've gone from 258 to 277. And our special education transportation, it's a 20% increase from this year to last year. And the out of district is a 30% increase this year over last year. And what that means is the special education budget makes up almost 24% of our general fund budget. And when that overall budget has a 6% increase, it affects your bottom line. Oops.
It looks like Dr. Casavant got kicked off. Let's see if give him a moment to hopefully come back on. I don't know if Susan, you want to reach out to him since he was
We'll
the
do that,
keeper-
yes.
Yes, he was the keeper of the presentation. So please bear with us during some technical difficulties. Someone else have a copy of the presentation? So I don't know how many more slides.
Yes, actually, we're working on that right now. I'm kind of on the scenes with
Perfect.
Anne Marie here trying to make
Yeah.
that happen. So just bear with us for 1 second,
No problem.
please.
Yeah, I can open it.
If she can get screen sharing, that would be great.
Me.
It looks like Dr. Casavant is having some connection issues. He said,
Can you see the screen?
yes.
Okay. Well, let me just find where we are and we'll just keep continuing on.
I'm not sure if I'm here. Am I here?
Yes,
Here.
you are here.
Well, I'm going to leave my picture off, which of course will be good for anyone watching. I'm not quite sure, but my entire Google just shut off. So Susan, if you just want to run this PowerPoint just in case, I'm not quite sure, but Google shut down for me, not my internet. So I'm not quite sure what happened. So I apologize.
Yes, Anne Marie has it up right now on the screen.
Okay.
So I think we're good.
Okay. Sorry about that, folks.
So we'll continue on with the fixed cost. And like I said, the Worcester Regional Retirement had an increase of 28%. Our employee health insurance rates are increasing by 5%. We had our general property insurance is an increase of 17.5%. I do have that out to bid at the moment. So hopefully we can get a rate that's at least what's in the budget, not what's over budget, which just keeps happening to me the past few years. But again, I want to point out that the fixed costs make up 20% of the entire general fund budget. And that's an overall increase of those fixed costs by 3%. So again, when you have that larger percentage of your budget going up by that amount, it's gonna drive the prices up. So as we all know, the general fund budget is only a portion of how we operate the district. We have revolving accounts and grants and school choice that all make up our operating budget. And as you can see, our total operating budget for the district is $23,165,782. And with the funding sources that we have available to us, we are at a shortfall of $188,345. With that being said, with that shortfall, we feel that we can cover that if we go all in with the usage of our E&D. And this is just something that we put together just to kind of show the history of how we've used E&D for the last 10 years or so. And if you follow like the colors through, you can see, for example, FY10, once it's certified, it becomes immediately available once it's certified, but you don't know it's certified until a year after the fact. So it really isn't available for use until 2 years after the fiscal year it belongs in. So if you follow the colors and the arrows, you can see like FY10, we certified $95,093. In FY12, we used all of that to help fund the budget. And you can see as you go down the line, the amounts that we've used each year. And only the last couple of years have we been able to have a little bit in reserve for an emergency. But it's looking like this year that we're going to need to go all in with the $480,000 that was certified for FY20. So as we talked about that shortfall, this is the income sheet that shows that our general fund revenue has an increase of only 1.66%, which does create the shortfall of $188,000 for the general fund. So what's made up is the usual, the state aid with the Chapter 70 and the charter school reimbursement. The Chapter 70 has the minimal increase of $30 per student. So that's only an increase of $37,000 for us. Charter school is very volatile. We really don't know what we're going to be reimbursed on that. And it's just a minimum increase. But the big one this year, obviously, is the transportation reimbursement. That is predicted to be $130,000 short, and it's because we were not able to run the buses like we were supposed to last year or the way that we're supposed to run them this year. So obviously, if we're not running them and paying as much, we're not going to have as much of a reimbursement. There's also a new thing that we have been awarded, which you've heard several times. It is the ESSER 2 funding, which the district was awarded $551,234. Of that grant money, there is a provision that says that up to 75% of that number must be used to subsidize the town's minimum local contribution increases if they so choose to have us do that. So on this income sheet, I have reflected what that is. And for both towns combined to cover their increase in minimum local contributions, it's $189,832. And I included that as a revenue source for this general fund income sheet. And as you can see, the E&D with 480 still leaves us short over what we contributed last year. So overall, the Phillipston and Templeton assessments with the ESSER funds, if they choose to use them, would be an increase of 0.53% for Phillipston, equaling $8,720. And Templeton's assessment would be a 3.39% increase of $233,931. So those are, they're pretty minimum. I think it's reasonable requests of us to ask for that. And part of that CARES funding that we talked about, this is the breakdown. It shows what our total award was. When you subtract out the subsidy, if they choose to use it, leaves us a balance of $361,402. And I had talked about the shortfall in the general fund prior in a few slides before. And as you can see, part of that balance of that grant money will be to use to cover the shortfall from the general fund. And we had talked about in the very first slide about expanding the extended year program. So part of that CARES 2 funding will cover that. And we're hoping to add the 3 positions that are currently remote teachers at the elementary. Will be able to keep those to help reduce the class sizes for next year as well. I don't know if anyone has any questions, or we just keep going on.
Let's keep going on, Anne Marie. I do see there's a question from Mike Curry. I did respond in the chat, but we're going to go over that information, I think, in more detail about the ESSER 2. So
Okay.
we'll go over that. But I don't see anything unless the school committee at this point has any questions. And if you do, I can't see everyone, so speak up. Okay, I think we're good to go on.
So Chris, do you want to take over from here?
Yeah, let's see how it goes. So ultimately, what we wanted to do is provide kind of like the bottom line numbers. So if you look at what the assessments are currently, they, for Phillipston and Templeton, and so what's available for the town of both towns, and they would have to, of course, be voted to receive or accept them. But the ESSER 2 funds would cover $50,429 for Phillipston, Templeton, $139,403, and this is for this year only. So I think that's the key here. It's not like it's in perpetuity. So the new assessment, if the ESSER 2 minimum local contribution subsidy is voted by each town, the assessments are obviously reduced by the amount that's in the middle. So I think that is the takeaway is that by design by the state, the money was distributed in hopes that it could be spread not only through the school, but for the municipalities if they so choose. So if you keep going down, okay. So I think this is probably, well, certainly this is a new slide for anybody who's been watching the other 2 meetings, because we met last week, but in a short amount of time, we've learned a lot of things. And one of those things is that the Commissioner of Education has made the statement and is petitioning the Board of Education to return back, quote unquote, in full for the elementary on April 5th. Now there's an asterisk there because I want to just point out that we think it's April 5th. That's the first Monday. I'm going to assume that's the day. That's the date we've been told. It's certainly, I suppose it could change because everything has changed one way or another as we go through this. And we view it as good news, bad news. And first off, the good news is that we get our students back in buildings. I've made it no secret that I believe and want our students back. I think it's not only good for them, it's good for us, it's good for education, it's good for everything. And we certainly know that in terms of safety and safeguards, we've done an excellent job through our maintenance folks, et cetera. And so we can do it safely. What is really, really new, quite frankly, is maybe 11 o'clock this morning, Hayward Hospital has invited the local school districts, Narragansett, Gardner, Ash West, Winchendon, Athol, Marhar, and I'm sure others. Those are the ones off the top of my head to vaccinate all school employees. First round being March 13th, which, if you want to talk about synergy, March 13th, 2020 is when we left our last full day of regular school, and March 13th, 2021, as my email suggested, is it's almost poetic, quite frankly. But that is fantastic news for everyone. And as it would happen, the second clinic would be April 3rd, which means that teachers would have both of their vaccines prior to the 5th, which is great. Staffing concerns, you know, the rule of thumb when presenting a budget is you don't want to mix your stories, and you don't want to mix years. You don't want to compare a budget necessarily to a good year, a bad year. And you don't want to talk about the year that, you know, like at FY23, you don't want to do that because it's just too many unknowns. But I have to tell you that in the craziest of times, although we're excited about students coming back, we're still in want of a lot of information, because what we've talked about quite a bit is that we made the decision to come back at 3 feet. When we started school, Narragansett, we were all in. We could have went 6 feet, as was the recommendation at the time, and really not have had the opportunity to teach in person the number of kids that wanted to. So we did that. And so the reason why I bring that up is that now, as districts are preparing who may be at 6 feet to go to 3 feet and then to obviously eventually come back full, we don't have to worry about that transition. But we already have established the number of students at 3 feet that what that number is about when the room is full. Okay. And so I use the infamous Mrs. Smith. I just bring up Mrs. Smith all the time and make up all kinds of things. But, if she has 11 in cohort A and she has 11 in cohort B, the max, say, is 12 in the room, given the 3 foot. Well, magically on April 5th, I now have 22 students that would be in person, but now I can't fit them in Mrs. Smith's room. Okay, so then the extras, right? The number of kids who can't fit, need to then. So it's a matter of teachers, and we've always known this. Again, when we started this journey and we were preparing for these things, the event that we are currently posed with right now was, and I understand that no one could foresee what it would look like at the end of the year, but we were led to believe that if we were ever going to come back, we'd be back. Or we were just going to simply just be out for the duration. So we have a math problem, in a sense that we have to spread these kids out. That means staff. It's not a matter of space. People have already contacted me and said, well, geez, if you had 2 elementary schools, you'd have plenty of space. It's not the number of physical rooms or space. We have the space in the new elementary school. We'd have to use every room. It's a matter of staff. So we're going to have to figure that out. And we're in the process of doing that. 2, if you look, they have not budged on the 6 foot distance rule when it comes to lunch. If you notice that the guidance in restaurants is, they've opened it wide open, but it's still 6 feet. Whether or not people are following that or not is irrelevant in this conversation, because we follow it. All schools follow it. So, in basic math, if just kind of to put it in context, if 11 kids takes up 100 square feet in a classroom, right, and at 3 feet, then it's going to be double that when you have to feed them in lunch at 6 feet, right? It's just really simple, math, and never mind trying to feed them. So you're talking about lunches that, right now we're using the gyms, we're using the cafeterias, we're using all these available spaces. And that we don't know that that's going to be enough space currently. We don't know. And it might mean a couple of things. And I want to put this out there now. because it does affect the FY22 budget, because we could very well be in this configuration in September or August, whenever we come back. And the reality is that so what did the commissioner say? The commissioner said, everybody back, right? We're going to go full days. People who want to keep their children full remote can do that. We're not going to, but if the schedule itself that the district has created requires any type of hybrid or remote, it's not going to count as time and learning. So when you hear that, that's 5 days, and that's fantastic. But right now, folks feel that they can just, I understand why. The commissioner said it. Come on back. You're going to come back full. We may not have the physical, we have the physical space. Lunches might have to start at 9:30 in the morning, which is more like brunch, but if we can feed them, that's feasible. But I don't know that I have the staff in order to make that happen, because that is the crux of the issue, and it will be. And if the state were to go so far saying that not everybody can stay remote, I'm talking about next year, that adds a whole other layer, which I'm not going to worry about now. But this is really a test run for how FY22 could look in September, because we don't know that. Now, could we be back under normal pretense? No 3 foot, no 6 foot? Sure, right? The answer that we receive from the state is, that's why we gave you so much money in ESSER2. It's exactly what they said to me. That's why you got $500,000, Casavan, to take care of this issue. Well, we already have seen where close to $366,000 has gone. It's gone to basically to balance the budget, right? So 188 just to balance, and 188 to the MLC. I'm not whining, by the way. I'm just simply saying that we'll be able to, I don't know, we'll have to look at we're literally remeasuring things now, but this becomes all of a sudden within a week, when I say, I don't want to say it's an emergency is health or safety. This is going to, I think, dampen a lot of expectations and hopes if I can't physically fit because I don't have enough people to do it. And then that will bleed over till next year. And so that's why I added this slide. And we're going to be doing a lot of talking about this community-wise, and of course within the school, within the schools itself, because this is going to be an issue, immediately, quite frankly. I guess the good news is that we'll be able to test run this here starting on April 5th, and it'll really give us the capacities. But I felt that obviously the committee, and of course the public at large who may be watching this, and of course the select boards, when I say a heads up, I'm simply saying that this is not something that we didn't plan for, we just forgot. We found this out a week ago, or a week and a half ago. So it is good and bad news. We're going to get the kids back. It's awesome. I don't know how many of them I'm going to be able to get back, given where we're spending our ESSER2 monies, right? And how we've had to, and the requirements to do that. So I didn't want to end on a sour note. I don't think it's a sour note. We'll try to figure it out. But as April 5th, the elementary kids are back. So I guess I open it up to, of course, questions, or Madam Chair, I believe there's a bit of a protocol to this part, so.
Sure. Thank you so much for the detailed presentation and helping us understand the various components of the budget, especially those items that drive the increase that we're looking at. I do just want, for the record, to read, we've had a couple of comments out on the YouTube chat, and I do want to read them just so that they're part of the official record. Mike Curry, a resident of Templeton, had made some comments just that he hears us for the COVID-driven items, the funding on it. I'd asked our congressional delegation to advocate for general use of allocated CARES federal funds. I just responded to him saying, agreed, Mike. There are many legislative forums coming up, and we'll need to continue advocating for more relief. And so I'm just going to make another note about that, between our local Mass Association of School Committees, legislative forums, I believe the Mass Association of Regional Schools is having a legislative forum. I'm sure that there are other ones out there. We should have enough touch points with our legislators to hopefully get them to hear our cry for relief for these things. And especially with that last slide that you went over, Dr. Casavant, it's a concern. Yeah, we want those kids back, but how do we do it and fund it?
And it's only fair to say, and I didn't add this at the end, is that we know that, or we think that there's another package looming, right? We think we know this, and so that's why I'm not really labeling this as an emergency right now. I don't know what I don't know, and maybe it all goes, but it only kicks the can down the road so far, and I think that that's the key. And by the way, I also want to make sure that I know that Mr. Curry and I think others are watching this meeting. Templeton, really honestly helped and saved the day with taking on some costs through CARES / FEMA, MEMA, whatever it was, especially around the technology pieces. And that really helped us stabilize us in the very beginning of this whole ordeal. And I want to again publicly thank them for really coming to us and saying what can we do here to help. And that was a huge help. And I need to make sure I say that again in public forum, because that was something that saved the day, truly. So you're right, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yes, yeah, and ditto to that, to the town of Templeton. I'm not sure where we would have been without some of those monies. We certainly couldn't have responded as quickly to many of the needs we had. And I don't know what we would have been able to cut, because there's nothing we really can, but something would have had to been cut. So, want to reiterate the thanks to the town of Templeton. Mr. Curry also had another comment when we were discussing the ESSER II funding, talking about, does that go to the select board for request or approval? I just commented we're going to discuss that in more detail, but yes, it would go. Much like the, hey, guess what, April 5th is the date for the kids to come back. New details about the ESSER II funding keep evolving. I think literally Monday at some point during the day, the DESE had sent out some additional guidance that actually stated that the local select boards or city councils, depending if you're a city or town, would need to go ahead and vote that, yes, you want to use the funds. So this is still evolving. And I know in a conversation I had earlier with Ms. Geister about how do we account for it, as Emery said, she put it in as an income item on the income sheet because we really don't know where it should go, because that additional guidance hasn't come out yet. So this will be evolving as the guidance comes out. So I thank you for asking the question, Mike, and you'll find that we're going to probably make a motion to reach out to the towns to get both towns to be able to do what they need to, so that we can then apply the ESSER II funds, if that's what the towns so wish, to the minimum contributions. Okay, I see a couple other comments coming in. Tim Toth from Templeton. He commented that the CDC has indicated yesterday that only schools in Franklin County should fully reopen. This seems to contradict the governor's and commissioner's guidance. A link to follow. So thank you, Tim. If you provide the link, we'll certainly look at that. I believe I saw that article come through as well. So if you put the link out there, that'd be great. Mike Curry then just said to thanks Margaret for the information. Templeton Cares allowance was about 600,000, of which we can only spend 160-ish on COVID direct costs. The feds could vote to widen its use of money already appropriated. Very good point, Mr. Curry. And I think that's one of the definite advocacy routes we need to take, that there's a very narrow scope with monies that they're making available. And if we can expand them, maybe we could find different ways to use them. Chris?
Madam Chair, I just want to say that Mr. Toth's comment is very well received. And I want to say to you that I was literally on a conference call with DESE related folks. And, clearly they made the statement that, that they weren't necessarily going to follow all the CDC guidelines. And this has been the problem going forward, is that the state governs, right, us, we know this, but we have some CDC, we have not some CDC. So I'm smiling because that was actually brought up in great discussion about everyone's back. But the CDC, says it really should only be Franklin County, and the state said, well, we're really going to believe our own experts here. So when I say to you that things are changing, and just by the way, and Jeff Bennett made a good point about it. Says it says right there in the about the ESSER 2 grants about that they would go to the towns for a decision. Absolutely, what people honestly took so long to figure out is it was going to be the school committee to vote to give the money, which didn't make sense. Nor they didn't know who was supposed to vote for the monies, and it took, quite frankly, I think until yesterday, for them to come up with the fact that that's how the towns would have to accept the money. That's how uneven some of this is as we move forward. So both of those comments literally took place yesterday in real time.
Yeah. And thank you, Tim. He says many moving pieces. Absolutely. And we look forward to working, Tim and Mike are both on the select board in Templeton, so we really look forward to working with you on a lot of these things. Mike just said just one of a few possibilities for temporary solutions and trying to find a wider berth for the use of the funds. I did also want to point out is with these ESSER 2 funds, this is the governor's budget that was passed, was put out on January 27th. It has not gone through the House. It has not gone through the Senate. It was or any committees along the way. We always assume, that's what we base our information off of when we craft our budget. But we actually won't know until the budget gets its stamp of approval, hopefully before July 31st, what the ultimate end result is for these ESSER 2 funds. I don't know what the House and Senate, from what I understand, it kind of took them by surprise that was part of the governor's budget. So it'll be interesting to see how the House will first debate on the use of the funds and where that goes. So we'll get a good indication. Is it a good use of funds? Probably it is. So we'll see what happens with that. But everything is so up in the air with so many things. I'm just checking the feed. Terry Griffiths just says she's here and listening. Again, welcome, Terry, and thank you for identifying yourself. And Mike says you're all on it. Thanks for your diligence and great presentation. So I think that was it. Okay. If I'm going to keep my eye on the chat for a few more seconds, I did want to open up to the school committee for any public input that you would like to have. I know I've kind of monopolized a little bit of the conversation, but I did want to open it up to the school committee. I know we've discussed this multiple times already. But was there any other information that you wanted to share or make a comment on before we wrap up with the last few comments coming in and then close out our public hearing? I'll look to the committee. And Kate and Anne Marie too, if you have anything to add, you're certainly welcome to. Susan, yeah. Okay, I'm not seeing anything. And as I said, I know that we have discussed this and asked a lot of questions in the past. So just the last couple questions. Tim says here, want to see the kiddos back in school and get it done safely. Yeah, we are there. We know that the best learning model is in-person instruction. So we're going to figure it out. And I look forward to hearing more from our administration, but also more from the state as to what those guidelines are. I laugh because we follow the science, but I guess it depends on which science we're following, on what day and for what reason. There is I just saw it come across that there is a 2:00 Board of Education meeting on Friday where Commissioner Riley is going to petition to be the one who decides whether the remote / hybrid / whatever models will count towards time on learning. So by Friday, I would assume we're going to know a lot more based upon what happens at that board meeting. So, all right. If there's no further comments, and I'm just checking the YouTube feed, what I'd like to do is close out the public input, the public hearing portion of our meeting. Let me find my agenda in front of me, so that we can start having our budget discussions. Just another comment from Scott Dill in Templeton. He says, Templeton tough, we will get through this. Thank you, Scott. And we will. This regional school district is here for both Templeton and Phillipston, and together we will get through this. So thank you for your comment. So with that being said, I am going to close out the public input portion, and I will close out the budget hearing. So I will declare that the budget hearing has been officially closed. So I thank you to everybody who has watched the budget hearing for this portion of our meeting. And now we're going to go into our FY22 budget actions. I do want to just give a preemptive little speech, I guess, about our budget hearing. Normally, we come out of our budget hearing and we have a good idea of certifying our budget. We've already spoke about ESSER 2 and the challenges that we face because we're just looking for some more direction from the state. And it just recently came out that we found out the select boards will need to approve the monies. So one of the things that we need to do in order to be in compliance with the fact that we haven't received that official notification from the boards of selectmen of both towns, because they didn't know up until maybe 24 hours ago this was the case. Our budget certification will have to be without the application of those ESSER 2 funds. And what we will do is, once the boards of the two towns meet, and if they approve the use of the funds, we'll have to recertify our budget and recertify the town assessments to reflect the use of those funds. So this is not the end all be all of our budget certification, but this is step one as of today to certify our overall number and go from there. So with that being said, I would like to make a motion that we pass first to that ESSER 2 issue. And I'd like for someone that we would motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee instruct the superintendent and the business manager to send a written communication to our member towns of Phillipston and Templeton regarding the guidance related to the use of ESSER 2 funds, and advise the member towns that they'll need to affirm the decision to use the ESSER 2 funds as an offset to the fiscal year 2022 minimum local contribution increases by a vote of each member's town's select board. Once written confirmation from both member towns has been received, the school committee will then recertify the FY22 budget accordingly and provide new assessment numbers to the towns of Phillipston and Templeton. So I would entertain a motion to do such.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mr. Marks.
Second.
And I have a second from Mr. Mason. Are there any questions or comments on that? I know this is something kind of new, and I just want to make sure everybody understands, what we're reacting to the DESE guidance that we just received. Okay, so seeing none, we will do a roll call vote on that motion. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Ms. Jardier,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So that was unanimous. So obviously, Dr. Kazavant and Ms. Geister, if you will take care of working with the towns to get them the information that they need about the grants and advising them just to notify us once they do commit either way, so we know what to do, and then we'll take action. So thank you for that. With that being said, let me go back to my notes here, sorry. We do have our budget certification votes if the school committee deems it is necessary. So I just need to get the language here, so I apologize. So I do want to just talk about the rule of necessity, that if required, we will invoke the rule of necessity, explaining that voting members on the committee, in this case that receive retiree health insurance benefits, are still eligible to vote on the overall budget. If in fact we have to dissect the budget for any way, shape, or form, or have a conversation on specific line items that any member has any conflict with, we will, and we couldn't form a quorum to get a positive vote, we would invoke the rule of necessity. We do not need to do that at this time, but I wanted to just announce that that is out there so that if we do need to, people will have a heads up as to what that particular rule of necessity is. Okay. All right. So if the committee is prepared to certify a budget, I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote and certify the amount of $20,057,186 for the FY22 budget.
So moved.
I think that was Mrs. Trifilo first, so I'll take a second.
Second.
Okay, I'll take a second from Mr. Mason. I did see Mrs. Mattson, you had your hand up. I think you were tied. Any questions, comments, or discussions on the $20,057,186 budget?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we will do a roll call vote. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mrs. Chartier,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So that was unanimous that we have voted our budget number at $20,057,186. The next vote that we need to do is on our FY22 estimated income. I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the estimated income of $11,074,213 for fiscal year 22, which is based on $9,988,464 of Chapter 70 funds as calculated from the governor's budget of January 27th, 2021. $35,532 of charter school reimbursements from the cherry sheet estimates of January 27th, 2021. $325,217 of Chapter 71 special/regional transportation from the cherry sheets estimates of January 27th, 2021. $480,000 of certified excess and deficiency funds, and $245,000 of Medicaid receipts. I would entertain a motion as such.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Kojal. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mrs. Trifilo. Are there any questions or comments on that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to roll call. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud, oh, could you, I'm sorry, Mrs. Robichaud, I couldn't hear you.
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Chartier,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes, so that passed unanimously. Next, we'll vote on the two assessments for the town. We'll do that individually. So the first motion is that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment to Templeton in the amount of $7,283,240 for fiscal year 22. I would entertain a motion as such.
So moved.
I have a motion by Mrs. Kojal. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second by Mrs. Robichaud. Any questions or comments? I did just want to reiterate that these are the pre-ESSER 2 amounts. Once we get notification, these are the two numbers now that will change. So I just want to make the note of that clarification. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll do roll call. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mrs. Chartier,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Mattson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So that was unanimous. And the last motion that we'll need to make this evening is the FY22 assessment vote for the town of Phillipston. So I would entertain a motion that the Narragansett Regional School District School Committee vote the assessment to Phillipston in the amount of $1,699,733 for fiscal year 22. I would entertain a motion as such.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mrs. Trufalo. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from, I apologize, is that Mrs. Chartier? Okay, I got confused there. Any questions or comments? Again, I'll just note as a comment, these are pre-ESSER 2 application numbers that will be addressed once we receive notifications from the towns. No questions or comments additional. We will go to a roll call. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mrs. Chartier,
Yes.
Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Matson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So that was unanimous as well. So we have now taken actions to certify our budget with the overall number, the income, and the two assessments to the two towns. I know next up, our treasurer will be sending information to the towns based upon these numbers. I assume we'll send it together with whatever information that Dr. Casavant and Ms. Geister put together with the ESSER 2 information. So that'll go as a package to the towns. Are there any other school committee comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll just say thank you to Dr. Casavant and your entire team, Ms. Geister, for your unending numeric finesse, putting our numbers together and staying on top of all of these things that just seem to change day to day. This has not been an easy budget process because of the uncertainties, but it was very helpful the way that you've laid out, you know, what our needs and how we'll try and address them. So I just want to say thank you for all the work that you've put in, and thanks to your administrative team and everybody who's had a part in voicing their, you know, opinions, comments, concerns, helping to craft this budget to get us through next year. We look forward to more information on April 5th or whatever that means. Dr. Casavant, you want to end with any comments before we look to adjourn?
They make it look easy, my team. So it's not, but they do. They make it look really easy. That's how good they are. So
Great.
thank you.
Just for the record, our next meeting is on the agenda. The date is wrong. We actually moved our meeting to Wednesday, March 17th. So that it could be televised live on TCTV, which actually hopefully will be good because we'll be able to maybe get some information back from the select board. So if we need to do any recertifications, if we get the information back by then, we could possibly do it that night. So again, next meeting is on March 17th. And it would be at 5 o'clock via Zoom, not 6 o'clock. I guess I was in another world when I put this note on the agenda about it. So I apologize for that. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a motion from Mrs. Trifilo. Do I have a second?
Second.
And I have a second from Mr. Mason. We will do roll call. Mrs. Trifilo,
Yes.
Mrs. Kojal,
Yes.
Mrs. Robichaud,
Yes.
Mrs. Chartier. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you,
Yes.
Mrs. Okay, thank you. Mr. Marks,
Yes.
Mr. Mason,
Aye.
Mrs. Matson,
Yes.
and Mrs. Hughes says yes. So I do want to thank the public who have tuned in for our budget hearing and the great conversations we've had in the chat. If anyone else has any questions or comments and wasn't able to get them in, please feel free to contact the superintendent's office, and Dr. Casavant and his team will be able to address anything. Otherwise, have a wonderful evening, everybody, and we will see you soon at the next meeting.